Hey everyone, welcome to DeepThinker. This is our Wednesday 3 o'clock show. Today we've got a pretty interesting topic, maybe a little arcane, but I think people will find it interesting. For those of you, I got a new poster in back of me. It's now Austin instead of a bunch of dead trees. And my guest today is none other than Matt Domsch. And Matt and I both worked together for a few years here in Austin, but the topic today is about ham radio and amateur radio operators. So welcome, Matt. Thanks to the show.
Thanks, Charles. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So the way I understand it, the ham radio industry started back in the early 1900s. The term ham came from, I don't know, I guess it was just kind of a term. I heard that it meant hamish, like you would ham finger sandwiches, like you couldn't do Morse code properly.
Ham-fisted.
Ham-fisted, and it was kind of an unsophisticated term for someone who didn't know Morse code really well. But currently today in the U.S., we have over 670,000 licensed operators in the U.S., and the amateur radio is really a non-commercial exchange of messages that's free, besides buying the equipment and electricity. It's wireless, experimental, self-training. It's for private recreation, radio sports, contests, certainly for emergency use. And my primary experience has been with what's called single sideband, which is what we use for sailboats to get weather, emergency services, and talk to a community. And the reason why you do this is cell phones just are not possible out in the middle of the ocean, and satellite phones are prohibitively expensive, especially if you're talking point to point. So out of necessity, this type of radio use becomes really interesting, and so Matt's going to go through some of his cases and how he uses it. So Matt, I'll hand it over to you. How did you get started in ham radio? Is it from your dad? Have you been doing it for years? Hand it to you.
I've been in the hobby for about 3 years. I had one early experience back in college when one of my classmates had hooked up a little robot that he had designed to a ham radio receiver, and he was using a little handy-talkie, little handheld radio, bouncing the signal off of the Prudential building in downtown Boston and back onto campus to drive remote control his radio using the number buttons.
Wow!
So I thought that was pretty cool, but I didn't know. I didn't really understand what it was he was doing or how he was able to do it. But I thought it was a neat idea.
I think everybody's had like walkie-talkies in their life, and this is like a really expensive, powerful walkie-talkie. So yeah.
So if you fast forward a few years, and I've been doing a lot of camping with the Boy Scouts. I've got multiple kids involved with the program, and we would go off-grid quite a ways, where cell phones rarely would reach well. And one of my co-instructors asked me if I would help teach the Radio Merit Badge class, because it's one of the options Scouts can do, teach them about the technology and how it's useful for more than just chatting with your buddy in the next campsite over.
Right.
But I didn't know really how they worked. I'd had enough electronics in college to remember the basics, but didn't truly understand how radios worked in any detail. So I wasn't in a position to be able to offer or help him teach this class, but he said, here, take the book that the ARRL, one of the large national organizations for radio amateurs, publishes. Go read this book, come back to me next week, and then you'll know enough to help you teach the class. Now, I read the book and I was hooked.
Cool. But so that was exposure when you were a kid, but you've been doing it more seriously in the last 3 years or so.
Well, as an instructor, really, for the last 3 years or so.
Yeah, okay. So I have some general questions. So, everyone has a different use. There's base station folks, there are mobile folks, there are marine folks. It seems like they're all in their different clique, and it's use based, and so the clubs are based around those uses.
I think that's true. The form follows function, and so you'll have folks with small handheld radios, kind of like this, for when you're out and about. You don't have a giant battery on it, but it'll get you for half a day or a day worth of use. Real easy to drop into a backpack and go somewhere. Real easy if you're doing some community service and you're trying to coordinate different events, say at a parade or a marathon, where you're helping work aid stations. One of the big bike rides here in Austin, between Austin and Houston, the MS 150, brings out quite a number of amateurs to run the sag wagons and the rest stops and coordinate communication between all of those. Again, some of those are pretty far off the major highways.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't.
Not perfect.
I didn't think about it. I talked to a friend who's in Santa Clara, California. I mean, that's like the heart of Silicon Valley, and he at times has sketchy cell phone. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. I'm like, dude, you're in the center of tech, the center of the universe for tech, and your cell phone keeps dropping and has one bar, and you're in Santa Clara and Sunnyvale. So, get yourself out into any rural area, and if you just need to communicate locally meaning people that are part of that bike ride or part of your camping expedition or your sailing flotilla, why spend $5 a minute on Iridium satellite and you just radio each other? So I want to put up two diagrams here and have you explain them, because there's a lot of different frequencies and there's a lot of different misconceptions. The first one I'm going to throw up here is what I see is this is the long reach, and this is what we did with single sideband, is we're actually bouncing a signal off of the ionosphere, because if we have any flat earthers joining us today, I can't help you out, but the earth is round, and so line of sight are things like microwave towers. I don't know any other examples, but
television.
Television,
terrestrial television, terrestrial radio.
Line of sight
commercial radio is all line of sight.
Yeah, so here you have to get around the curvature of the Earth, and so you can actually skip a signal off the ionosphere. Now, you need some serious electrical, amperage to be transmitting these things. Now, receiving takes less, transmitting takes more energy. But this next diagram I'm going to throw up here is there's a bunch of different ways. So Matt just showed you his portable device. You can have a base station device, which is like equipment that looks like this, and you can have a room as cluttered as that. And then there are some good folks that put up these wonderful things called repeaters. So your mobile device can hit a repeater that then gets out. So Matt, a question for you is this is kind of like an ecosystem of folks that are out there. They may be in place, they may be reliable, they may not be. How do you track or find out repeaters and things?
Sure. In almost all cities and counties, you'll have an amateur radio club. Here in Austin, the Austin Amateur Radio Club operates a handful of repeaters, a couple of them up on top of the 1,000-foot television towers over in Westlake.
Okay.
And they have fantastic range. Right? Wow. They can get 30, 40 miles out pretty easily.
Wow.
I'm routinely out in Bastrop and can hit the repeaters in Westlake from Bastrop with 5 watts on a handheld.
Wow, that's really good.
Pretty nice. There's also online sites like repeaterbook.com where you can punch in the address or area that you're going to, and it'll tell you about all of the repeaters that are in that area. So this summer, we went on vacation out to East Texas, out near Lake Sam Rayburn. And knowing I was going to be out on a boat for a while, but not sure we'd have great cell phone coverage, I pulled down the list of repeaters from Repeater Book, programmed them into my radio, and had them just in case something were to go wrong.
Yeah. Cool. And so the devices, you can spend very little or you can spend a boatload in this world. And then there's more and more laptop software to be tracking stuff. And like you said, finding frequencies. And this is no small feat. But in order to listen, so anybody can go buy amateur radios and you can listen all you want. But if you hit that little transmit button, that's when you need to have a license. And these licenses come in a couple different forms. And it's been so long, I don't even remember. There's a tech license and a general license.
Okay.
I don't even remember what advanced and extra are. But
advanced no longer exists. Extra does. So technician, general, and extra are the three.
So what do I isn't it like if you take one, you should take the other, or they're similar, or if you take one, it means it's better, you don't need to take the other one? I forget.
Fundamentally, you just you get more privileges, meaning you have access to more spectrum you can transmit on with the higher class licenses. So which is which one? So technician is the first license that you would test for.
Okay.
And that gives you permission to operate, to transmit on the VHF and UHF spectrum. So the 145, 146 megahertz range and the 440 megahertz range that's licensed to amateur operators, as well as a little bit of access in the high frequency, the ones that do the long skip. So technician class license is really good for local operation. You're talking to people on repeaters in your town, your camping expedition split up into a couple of groups, and you want to talk back and forth to each other. Line of sight, relatively short distance kind of operation.
Right.
As well as a lot of your local emergency communication needs.
So I'm confused. Do I have to take one before I take the other, or? Okay, I do. And can I take both at the same time or something? Or?
Yeah, you can sit down and take the technician test. It's 35 questions.
Okay.
And multiple choice, A, B, C, D. If you pass that, you can, most testing organizations immediately let you sit down and take the second test and take your general. Again,
if you pass the first one or something? Or?
If you pass the first, that's right.
Yeah.
You got to pass them in order. So you pass your technician, then you can sit down and take your general, pass the general, 35 questions. You pass that one. Maybe not in the same session, but depending on the organization, maybe the same session, you can sit down and take the third test, which is your amateur extra. And that's 50 questions, multiple choice.
What does that buy you?
That provides you all of the spectrum privileges that are afforded under the FCC regimes.
Okay.
So that gives you full access to the spectrum. General gives you your high frequency, your 10 meter, 20 meter, 40, 80, and a couple of the others. The high frequency long skip, like your first diagram.
Yeah.
On most of the spectrum, but not on some of the choicest bits of the spectrum. The clearest signals tend to go through. To get that last little bit, you need that amateur extra test.
Yeah. So I got a question coming over chat, which is, can you take these classes online? And I believe the answer is no. You got to go to a volunteer examiner or something?
There are, because of COVID, a number of organizations have started offering the testing online. I don't have a list of them handy here. But there have, your local clubs will know about them. And in the ARR magazine, I've seen reference to them.
Is it a timed exam? You have a certain amount of time?
Realistically, no. It's up to the organization who's actually offering the test, and it is volunteers offering it. Usually they set aside several hours, and 35 question multiple choice, if you've read the book, it'll take you half an hour at most.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So I just remember a proctor exam means, it's not open book and you're not cheating and all that kind of stuff. If you go online, I guess it's going to be a little bit more of the honor system. Because you can be having an open book and they won't know because there's no proctor there, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, presumably they have you look around with your camera to show that you don't have any books out, you don't have any other windows open. I haven't done an online exam myself since they just started offering them recently as a result of COVID. Yeah.
I took mine a long time ago, and I don't ever remember it being that difficult. I didn't take the extra, so I don't know how tough that is.
It gets into a lot more theory. And
Okay.
it really made me remember a lot of the double E that I had and had forgotten over the last 25 years.
Great.
And a little bit, and certainly some concepts that I had just never been introduced to before.
Yeah.
But I read the book in the evenings over a number of weeks.
Yeah.
And went in quite comfortable.
Good.
You can take the tests online, practice tests, all you want. There are apps on your phone you can get.
Yeah, some are free.
Yeah. You can feel real comfortable that you're going to get all the answers.
Yeah.
The questions and answer bank are all published in the back of the ARRL books. They're publicly available.
Okay.
So you can know the entire test set of questions, right? There's 800 questions in the bank, and they'll ask you 50 of them.
Yeah, a little different than taking the bar, because when I took the bar for the legal exam, they say there's 2 wrong answers and there's 2 right answers. But of the 2 right answers, there's one that is arguably a tiny bit more right than the other. And I'm like, oh, geez. And it really is that way. And at least the amateur radio license isn't trying to trick you like that. So that's good.
Yeah. Not that I found.
Another question here. Can your signal be tracked? And I think the answer is yes with a direction finder, because I know when I used to fly, we had a DF thing, and so we could tune in a AM radio station, and I'd have a little needle that would point to the AM radio station. But can they get to your house or your local, or?
Two answers to that. Number one, you can intentionally broadcast your location when you are out and about. So this radio that I have here has a built-in GPS.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And one of the mechanisms, amateur packet radio system or reporting system, APRS, is a mechanism where it broadcasts out a beacon every so often with your GPS coordinates.
Cool.
So if you're out and about and you want people to be able to follow you on a map, these are really handy things to have.
Oh, so it would do breadcrumbing to some web app so people can see where you are in the forest.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's handy. There's a whole another area of the hobby called fox hunting, which is you put a radio transmitter, probably a little low power transmitter somewhere secret, hidden. Wow. And you have teams of people or individuals out there trying to figure out where that transmitter is. You go on a transmitter hunt.
Wow, like geocaching or something. So
exactly, we call it fox hunting. Huh. And for that, you use like in your airplane example, you use an antenna that helps provide a better, stronger signal when you're pointing in the right direction, and a weaker signal when you're pointing off, and you use that to triangulate the location.
Very cool. So I guess that's part of the radio sports world there.
That's right.
Got another question. Can you swear on the radio?
Not supposed to.
Yeah.
Every now and again, you'll get people to do it, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah. I get another question. When you're signing off and someone says 73, what does that mean?
Sure. 73, like a lot of the other, there's shortcuts, if you will. 73 simply means best wishes.
Okay. Now, do you have the example for the text world of OMG LOL?
No, that one I don't have. And I'll be honest. Most of those are used on the little short codes. You call it Q codes. They're used in conversation. It originally started from Morse code. To shorten a long question that you have asked regularly into 3 little characters.
Got it.
What's your QTH? Where is your home?
Okay. Right. So one of the most popular questions here is cost, and so I guess the way to answer that is, what's your use case? Are you camper vanning and you want to be mobile? Are you doing a base station? And I guess you have to answer that question first before you can go into the cost question.
You really do, because you can spend as little as $25 or $30 for an introductory radio that's a little handheld. That's perfectly adequate for a lot of use cases.
Yeah,
you can spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars if you so choose. Setting up a contest station with multiple operating positions. You can have multiple club members operating there simultaneously, with giant 100-foot towers in your yard, and very expensive antennas and lightning protection.
Yeah, I've watched a bunch of interesting YouTube videos of just the layout. This is a really low quality picture here, but it gives you, sorry it's so grainy, I couldn't find a higher quality one, but you look at all this crap and you're like, oh my God, dual screens. And so in this mess here, there are speakers and microphones, there's a clock, there's a bunch of laptops, microphones, keyboards, but each of these pieces of equipment have a specific use, whether it's for tuning, for DC power, backup, I don't know what, but there was some fantastic guys who've been working optimizing their base station layout, and it was learn from those guys if you want to take a look at it. Are you at that level, or are you more?
Mine's pretty simple. I've got a handful of these little handheld radios, again, because they're convenient. I've got a mobile radio that I use as a base station.
Now, is that attached to a car?
It is not.
Okay.
I've got mine. It's a Yaesu FTM 400, and it's a very nice radio. I've got the same one in my car and in my truck, so I've got the same programming set up for all three of them.
But three different units.
Different units.
You don't carry them around or something.
No. Okay. No, they need to be plugged into 13.8 volt DC power.
Yeah.
So I need a power supply for them. And that I use that for talking to friends here in the local area, as well as using some of the internet-connected repeater systems, so you can talk to other folks around the world on these VHF and UHF frequencies.
So I hear a lot of people wanting to go off the grid. They get themselves a Mercedes Sprinter van or minivan or something. They put bunks in it and head off into the wilderness, and oh shit, my cell phone doesn't work. So a handheld device isn't going to buy you too much besides a high-end walkie-talkie-ish thing. So if someone was doing that off-the-grid camper van thing in remote areas, what would they need? Because they got to have some kind of a larger antenna. They've got a better power source. They don't have to have something that fits in their pocket, of course. And I imagine this setup is a little bit more expensive and complex than just a citizen band radio. Because CB radios, to me, it's like if you're on the freeway, it does like a mile in front of you, a mile behind you, and that's it, man. It is so limited, citizen bands.
And that's intentional.
Okay.
The FCC wanted to keep the power limits down to prevent them from going long distances.
Okay.
These radios are generally a mobile radio. It's the same size as a CB radio. Right? It's about like so as the base unit, and another about like so as maybe the display unit. Sometimes it's on the same unit. Sometimes they're two different ones.
Okay.
In my case, they're two separate ones with a cable between them.
Yep.
And then you need an antenna on top of the vehicle. In my case, I've got a very inexpensive magnet mount antenna for my car. About 19 inches tall. Sits on a magnet on the roof. Very simple.
Nothing totally obnoxious that sits up 10 feet. Okay.
On my truck, I've got it's a half-wave vertical, so it's a full 1 meter tall.
Yeah.
Hard mounted on top of the truck, and that provides a real nice signal for.
Now, those aren't units that you're skipping off the ionosphere, are you? Those are good for what type of range?
You can get 20, 30 miles on them pretty easily.
Okay.
Especially if you're hitting a repeater somewhere between you.
Yep.
If you've got a repeater 30 miles away, then your footprint obviously is that of the repeater.
Yeah. And the quality of the voice is really good.
Oh, it's as clear as you and I are talking right now.
Really? Wow.
Especially the new digital technologies that are available.
So it just cleans up all the background noise and just, oh, that's great. Yeah, I think anybody who hears, ham radio system band, they're used to the, 10-4 good buddy, and they're thinking of, in movies or something, or World War II, that you're like, what the hell did he say? That they don't understand that quality is really as good as what you're getting on the internet. So
absolutely, a lot of and you've got internet linking between a lot of the repeater systems these days. So you have a much longer reach, even though you're using all the frequencies that were originally designed for relatively short line of sight range.
Oh,
now,
I saw that.
Mobile. You asked about mobile. You can also get mobile radios that have the high frequency, the ionospheric skip, the real long distance. I personally don't operate that way, but I know a number.
Because you don't need to talk to someone in Argentina or something.
Not for my truck.
Yeah. Again, so it's like, oh, great! I can pick up someone in Guatemala. Now what I do? So that seems to be more for the base station type folks that are out there.
That's right.
Now we're coming up on the bottom of the hour. My last question, and again, this is my ignorance from the sailboat single sign-on world. You can get people to connect you to a landline, and so. With single sideman, we were out sailing, and I don't know, someone had to make a phone call, and so we could talk to someone who then connected us to a telephone. Now the person on the phone is all freaked out because they don't understand that it's simplex, not duplex, and there's a delay, and you have to say, "Hey, this is Charles. I'm in the middle of the Pacific. Over." And so you can't talk on each other. Is there the same thing in the ham world for that?
There is in a few places left. It's called auto patch, where a repeater you can punch in special codes on your the touch tone codes on your handheld or on your mobile radio handset, and dial phone numbers. And the repeater is connected to a phone line that makes that transition for you.
Yeah. Huh.
In practice, those cell phones have gotten so good that almost nobody offers that anymore. In addition, a lot of the systems that were built to do that auto patch function at the repeater sites were never upgraded to handle 10-digit dialing.
Oh,
so as 10-digit dialing rolled out across the country,
it sounds like a
hardware became obsolete.
That's funny. That's like a Y2K problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are no more systems here in the Austin area that offer auto patch.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I've looked when I've traveled to other cities, and I haven't found any.
Yeah.
So I've also never needed to use it, so I've been fortunate that way.
Right. Cool. Well, that's it for our 30 minutes. I greatly appreciate everyone joining in, and thanks to our guest today, Matt Domsch. And hopefully this gives people at least the intrigue to possibly, get into this world, and at least know that there's an option out there if you do decide to go off the grid. Everyone's going to have a handheld GPS, but you may want some communication method, because I can guarantee you your iPhone whatever is going to be pretty much just good for playing solitaire, and that's it. So great. Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time, and we'll pick this up next Wednesday. Thanks again, Matt. We'll see you.
Thanks, Charles.
All right.